Hello and welcome to the Timeshift. I'm Chris Hall, and this week we're looking at the latest episode of Doctor Who entitled The Witchfinders. Now, because this video is going to be a review of that episode, this video is going to be spoiler heavy. So if you don't want this episode spoiled for you for whatever reason, it's best to switch this video off now to avoid any spoilers. But for the rest of us, it's time to dive headfirst into The Witchfinders. Now, before we get too far into this week's review, I want to know what you, dear viewer, thought about this week's episode of Doctor Who. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section whichever website you're watching this on, and I will get back to you shortly, either directly in the comments themselves, or towards the end of next week's video, or in a video all of its own. Ooh, teases for things which may or may not happen in the future. Ooh. As for me, I did enjoy this week's episode of Doctor Who quite a bit. I think that it does have certain weaknesses which some people may find to be rather controversial, some which are related to the episode's story, and some to the performances, which again might be controversial, but we'll get to the performances in the performance section which follows this one. Be sure to watch as much of the video as you can and not duck out in the last 5 minutes or so, as apparently you seem to all do, but whatever, I'm not going to hold that against you. The mere fact that you're here is doing me a power of good. As for myself, I did enjoy the episode quite a lot. It was really nice to see an episode set not too far away from me. I mean, yeah, it's not as though Pendle Hill is just out of my window that I could see it going on right here, right now, but it was nice to have an episode set in North Lancashire, or I suppose that's closer to Central Lancashire than anything else. As for the episode itself, yes, it was fantastic, and it was really nice to see an episode dealing with more local history than we've had this much this year. If nothing else, it's an edutainment story again, which was both educational and entertaining. I loved the look of the mud witch zombies. It had an almost Evil Dead kind of look to it, which really appealed to me. I think I liked the idea of the prison, the space prison, where Lady Mud Monsters secretly lived. I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure. There's a little bit of Hammer horror there that I'm not entirely sure about, but I think for the most part it works, even if I think that's kind of how the monster from Fern Gully came about. He was living in a big, nasty-looking tree, then he squirted out, and I think that's kind of the same thing that happened here. I'm not so sure. But you know what? Let's not sugarcoat it anymore and just grasp the thistle. Controversial opinion time. I think that the science fiction element of this story, as interesting as it was totally unneeded. I know that a lot of people are just kind of sick of the historical episodes of Doctor Who at the moment. They really just want some more decent sci-fi stories, and you know what? Increasingly I'm getting to that point of view as well. I mean, I've not turned against the historical episodes at all, but yeah, I don't want to get to the end of this series and have the only interesting sci-fi episode being Kablam. I don't want that to be the case, but yeah, it would be nice to see like clinky, clicky robots at some point in the future doing nefarious things and not just Stitch and Kablam robots, but that's another discussion for another time. But I think that the sci-fi element for this story and the other historical-led episodes has been wholly unneeded, and has been more often than not the weakest aspect of those episodes. It feels as though it's stuff that's been added in because it's Doctor Who, so yeah, of course there's going to be aliens and robots and monsters lurking in the dark. You can't have an episode of Doctor Who that's historical-led without sci-fi. What a stupid notion. I mean, it's not as though we did that for pretty much the entirety of the early run of the show or anything. No. It was always about some kind of bug-eyed alien doing nefarious things in the past. And when we get to here, when there's a genuine and sincere attempt to do a historical-led episode of Doctor Who, which isn't just we haven't done Vikings in a while, let's do Vikings again, and the Doctor can run about wearing sunglasses, and when they meet the big historical celebrity, then fist bump them and make references to Fortnite and Facebook and MySpace, because we can be hit with the kids too, brah! Yeah. That kind of deal, it doesn't really sit that well with me. I'd rather have a historical episode about Doctor Who, which is actually about the history of that era that isn't just using it as a backdrop. As, again, controversial opinion, I think that the vast majority of historical episodes up until this point, particularly in the modern run and to a certain degree the classic run as well, you could pretty much set it in a different era and it wouldn't change that much of the episode itself. It's a monster in the past doing something that's going to damage history. Oh wait, the Doctor sorted it and the things it was doing really may or may not have actually done anything. It was just a creepy, bitey alien that wanted to eat people. Okay, so it ate a few villagers who, yeah, okay, sad, but they could quite easily have been colonists on a space station or something like that. It didn't really need to be a historical episode at all. And now we actually have historical episodes that feel as though they justified their time period a shitload more. I would rather that it was an episode where the threat was, oh, the Doctor's doing sci-fi stuff and he's wearing clothes that are not from that era and someone thinks that they're a witch. I think that should be the threat and not chocolate-faced mud monsters who look really, really lame. I mean, yeah, if we're going to have sci-fi stuff in the historical episodes, I like the sci-fi stuff to look and feel a little bit more intimidating and current with the threat that's going on. Like, you know, I don't think the mud monster was that interesting to look at. I think that Lady Becca Savage, which feels like an incredibly northern name for a lady, but whatever, I think that she just looked like Tim Shaw, who in turn looked like Shadow King of the Shadow King from Class. A fairly generic, lumpy-faced alien person who didn't really seem to have that much of a presence to them. The moment where Lady Becca Savage, which sounds like a drag name if ever there was one, is there screaming as her body looks like it's rotting away before our very eyes, was really fucking creepy and unnerving. But then the moment she rises back up and looks like a strange cosplayed version of a Power Rangers villain, it kind of took a lot of the threat out of that moment. And of course the moment when she knocked everybody out rather than just doing the mud conversion thing there and then. Yeah, it was very odd, and to be honest with you, I'd have been perfectly fine if the episode had just ended there and it went to a cliffhanger. The next week we saw the Doctor saving King James and we went from there on, but no, from that moment on, the pace that we've been building up, the mystery just kind of stopped. And then the final act of the episode felt as though it was going way too quickly for me to really enjoy it as much. The sci-fi element, weakest element by far, and I think that that's the thing that desperately limits the episode itself. I liked it up until the science fiction moment, which seems to be the running theme of this year's series of Doctor Who, but you know what, we're starting to get into waffly territory, so let's dive into the performance section, where more controversial things may well be said. Oh dear. Now, I just want to say for the record, I'm not going out of my way to say anything controversial. I just know that some of the things I say might be taken the wrong way. Though, of course, if you're a long-time viewer of the Timeshift, you know that if there's something I don't like in Doctor Who, I'll come out and say it. I am a fan of Doctor Who, but if I see something lacklustre or something I don't like, I'm going to come out and say it. But we may as well start off with the positives. I think that Alan Cummings' performance, Alan Cummings' performance, because it's Alan Cumming, not Alan Cummings, but when you say it as it's his performance, it becomes Alan Cummings. I know I shouldn't waffle about this, but a lot of people are getting very pissy about that, everyone calling it Alan Cummings, you know what. I thought his performance was fantastic. Some people call it hammy, some people call it scenery chewing. I thought it was fine. I thought it was perfectly keeping in the tone of Doctor Who for a historical performance. It was a nice counterpoint to the performance of Rosa that we had a few weeks back. It felt keeping with the show and in a way that felt a lot more identifiable, had a great deal of depth to the character, both performatively and within the writing of it. It's probably one of the best guest appearances we've ever had in Doctor Who. A lofty claim given just how long this series has gone on for, but it's one of those performances which, if nothing else, shows you a character, a person from history that a lot of people may not have known or really researched that much about in school. Someone who may have got a little bit of a mention when we were discussing about the witch trials and that, but not really that much else. And I think that Doctor Who being a venue for that is great. I think that and I forget her name again, the woman who played Lady Becca Savage, was great. I've pretty much only ever seen her in comedy stuff up till now, and just seeing her in this role was really great. It was great that she could be both intimidating but also slightly sympathetic towards the end of it. She was doing what she was doing because she desperately hoped that it would save her, and she thought that it was the right and righteous thing to do. It is a shame that, yeah, she couldn't get saved at the end of it, but you know what? It's Doctor Who, and that kind of thing just ends up happening. It's the old science fiction movie trait of, I created you! You can't do this to me! Kind of deal that has happened pretty much all the way back to Frankenstein, or at least the Universal Monsters version of it. It's something that will always be there and always be part of it, so getting pissy about that really ain't nothing to be doing. It's when we get to the main cast, however, where things start to get a little bit rocky for me. And whilst I think everyone did a commendable job, I have to say again, and I'm probably going to keep saying this until the circumstances change, I just don't think that the TARDIS crew thing really works. It's kind of a bit hard for me to say that, bearing in mind that I have warmed to the characters quite a bit. I feel that they are starting to settle down with me and starting to feel a lot more finished and developed by my mind, but I'm struggling to really say what Jodie Whittaker's Doctor is. And it's not because she's doing a bad job in the performance side of things, it's not because she's poorly written. Though I suppose to a degree the fact that she is a new actor playing a new Doctor, certain things haven't been established, is always going to be an issue with it. I mean, it's very rare for a Doctor just to be like that out of the gates. It's surprisingly rare, far rarer than people think, but I think the reason why I've not warmed to her quite as much as I have with previous Doctors is the fact that we have such a large ensemble cast that we get very few moments where it's just the Doctor and maybe a companion. We're having to go through different groups and different moments, and there was a moment in this episode where I totally forgot Yaz existed. You know, the moment where she goes off to find Grandma's granddaughter? I totally forgot she was in the story. I must have hiccuped or burped or farted at the moment where the Doctor said, alright, split up, Yaz, you go find Lady Grandma's granddaughter and we'll go off and do this thing. I must have not been awake when that happened because I totally forgot that she was there. I didn't even notice that she was gone. And the moment I saw her going after Lady Grandma's granddaughter person, I thought, oh, yeah, Yaz is here. What's she doing there? Isn't she with the Doctor? No, she can't be with the Doctor because the Doctor's all the... Did she give her order? Oh my god, I forgot about Yaz. And that's what I felt. I felt incredibly guilty for forgetting a character existed. And I've not really had that since Nyssa. And I said previously, I don't want Yaz to become the new Nyssa. But she's becoming that. I totally forgot she was there. I forgot she existed. And when I saw her again, it was, oh yeah, she's in this. And the reason is because she doesn't do a whole lot of much when it isn't an episode focused on her. And that can go with just about any other character in the show. Whilst you do have Bradley Walsh as Graham being the outstanding character within the show, that's only because he has an interesting character arc. Everyone else, they're just kind of standard Doctor Who companions, or at least modern Doctor Who companions. And the fact that we have 3 of them, it means that we have less time for the Doctor to actually be the Doctor. I did enjoy the speech that she was giving to King James, which feels like the closest we're probably going to get to her for a I am the Doctor kind of speech. And while some people really wish that she did have a I am the Doctor kind of speech, I am perfectly fine if she doesn't have one, because it's a factor and an element of the show which I'm just frankly sick of. I don't need a big speech with the dramatic music going dun 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 while the actor gives a big speech about love, peace, justice, doing the right thing, and I am the Doctor. I don't need that in order to understand that they are the Doctor. It's from by the week by week approach to it. And I'd rather just her be the Doctor rather than just alright, well, we're a certain number of episodes in now, so we need that speech so that everyone's certain that she's the Doctor. But you know what? Whatever. I'm getting into waffling territory. Like I say, I think that everything said and done, the TARDIS crew thing, whilst there are some interesting characters, whilst there are some decent performances, very commendable, very workmanlike performances, the harsh fact of the matter is that it takes time away from the Doctor to be the Doctor, and what very little we get of her, as great as it is, it's kind of hard to get as much as a feel of her as a character that I really would like at this point. Next week's the penultimate episode. I'm still not entirely sure who she's supposed to be, what makes her different from Capaldi and Smith and Tennant and Eccleston and McGann and McCoy and all the other rest of them. I don't understand what makes her so different, and it's purely and simply because she's sharing the screen with 3 other characters who, at times, I forget are even in the show. But we're starting to get into an overview territory, so let's just dive headfirst into the overview. And so the overview, what do I think of the episode as a whole? And as a whole, yeah, I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. With the exception of the final 5-10 minutes of it, where it went full on into the science fiction territory, it was great. Now, of course, again, I think that the big weakness of this episode and the series as a whole is that the moment the sci-fi thing really kicks in, I mean, beyond just the we're on a space station or something like that, the moment that the alien appears is the moment the episode stops being interesting. Mostly due to the fact that those aliens and those monsters either look fairly generic, or because they don't really do anything that really makes me say, yeah, this really works now. With only maybe the exception of the Kablam robots, who weren't really the villains at all, everything else within the episode itself just kind of felt great until we got to the sci-fi bit. The prison in the Pendle Hill, okay, great, but what else? These are fairly bland, forgettable monsters. I am starting to get into the camp of, yeah, maybe we should get the Daleks back. Maybe we should get the Cybermen back. We need something that's iconic. Something that's going to sit with this series going forward. And given the rumours that have been bubbling about in the background, you know, we'll see if we actually get any Dalek episodes or Cybermen episodes next year. If indeed we'll have Whittaker and Chibnall still at the end of next year's series. Even if there's going to be a whole series next year or not, we really don't know at this stage. It's so stuff that I don't like talking about and I'm not going to dwell on, but, you know, regardless of what happens, what is supposedly going in the background, this is Doctor Who, and as much as I have loved the historical episodes, we need something set in the space, in the future, on an alien planet, and we need episodes set in the modern day. The episodes that we had in the modern day have either been acceptable or terrible. The episodes we had in the science fiction side of things have either been terrible or enjoyable, and I don't want that kind of sharp contrast between episodes, because that puts us in the precarious territory. Think about how it may feel to certain people that watched Doctor Who for the first time with Rosa, then went on to Arachnids in the UK and weren't particularly sold on that episode, or people who were sold on that episode and then went to the Sengun conundrum and configuration. People like myself will watch Doctor Who almost regardless of quality, because I'm sold on it. It'll take a lot to make me start watching Doctor Who. Well, the closest we've ever got to it is Kill the Moon, and it's only because I do this that I probably stuck with it as long as I have done. I think that we need a little more balance to it, and if that means that Chris Chibnall is still the showrunner, but he doesn't write that many episodes for it, that's fine by me, because there is a precedent for that, and I'd rather that he was the creative voice that was selecting the best of the best of the best scripts, who was bringing us this great visual and creative direction. If that meant he didn't write episodes, that's fine by me, and I'll take that over having average episodes set in space, but we'll soon see. Next week's episode looks like it may be a little bit sci-fi. It's got a little bit of the Scandinavian detective drama to it, which feels apt given the creative history of our showrunner. He's not Scandinavian, he hasn't done, but he's done creative detective procedurals, so yeah. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm starting to get into waffly territory. I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode of the Timeshift. If you did, like us, love us, comment, subscribe, click your bell, and do all the fun things that YouTube wants you to do. It does me a power of good. And next week I'll be back for whatever the episode is called. I really don't recall, but you know what, whatever, I'm sure it'll be fine, and it's going to be the penultimate episode of this series. Yeah, penultimate episode when it's not a two-parter. I'm not entirely sure what I think about that, but we'll soon see. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.